Stepsons, you remember Philip that was with us on the charcoal barbecue episode? Well, Philip has some yard work he wants to do, particularly with fertilizer, and we're going to share that with you today so you can pick up on a few of those things as well. So, Philip, what is it that we're working on today?
Okay, so in a lot of our yard, the grass is pretty good, already pretty green, even though we're kind of just getting into spring. But I have like this patch of grass that comes out here that the sun right up here really kind of beats down on, that this grass tends to die a lot more. I was instructed to get this particular type of fertilizer because most of our lawn is pretty good, but this particular fertilizer is for areas like this where you can see it's kind of browning and the grass is not coming in green like pretty much the rest of the yard is. So this fertilizer we're only going to be putting down on this gray, this brownish area that we have here. So this, I was told to get 22-3-3.
So here's what those numbers mean. 22% nitrogen, 3% phosphoric, and 3% potash. All right, Stepson, so this is a brand new fertilizer spreader that Philip bought, and they're all going to have similar features, so I want to share that with you. You'll see on this one it has a dial, and this one goes from 2 to 15. And what that does is just adjust how big the opening is in the bottom when you squeeze this handle. So right now it's on 2, and I don't know if you can get a close-up of this, but when it's on 2 and I squeeze this, you see right in here, that just barely opens. So the low number is a small opening, and if I dial it around, and I'll put it on 7, it opens further, and if I go to 15, then it opens even more. So they'll have different gradations of how, what number means which, depending on the spreader type you've got. But that's really all it's doing is how open is that for while you're spreading. The other thing that spreaders have is when you're doing this, you'll see that right there spins around when I move it, because that's agitating the powder. These are for dry fertilizer. That agitates it so that it will feed into the hole, and then underneath there's a spreader setting here that spins around with the wheels too, and that broadcasts, and that's called a broadcast spreader. So this is a broadcast fertilizer spreader. So that's how this works. Put it in here, put it on the whatever setting it needs to be on, pull the handle and walk around at a consistent pace, and you can see the fertilizer getting spread out when you do that. So most bags of fertilizer will actually tell you how much to put on at a certain amount. This bag only has the total amount it covers. So Philip and I have had to do some math, and I'll show you how we did that. The other thing is a lot of fertilizer bags will have a setting. It'll tell you if you have a Scott's spreader, put it on 15, put it on 10, put it on 7. This bag doesn't have that on either, so we're going to give it our best shot, and here's how we figured it out. Paced off the yard, figured out the square footage that we wanted to cover, the amount that it says it covers, treat 10,000 square feet. So we figured out that the bag, it says a 50-pound bag covers 10,000 square feet. We calculated how much square footage we want to cover, and it tells us it's about 1/10 of the bag, 5 pounds, if we did the math right. And this is how we did it. I just paced it off. So that was 13 paces by 16 paces, and I average about 2.5 to 3 feet. I use 2.5 for my calculation. So 2.5 feet times by 13 times by 2.5 by 16. But actually the 16 is on the long side because this is not rectangular. It's kind of at an angle. So I'm actually taking about 10 on the back side because that'll even up with what we've got here. And that's how we got our estimate for footage, square footage, and how we came up with 10% of the bag. So we're going to put that in, and we're going to put the fertilizer down. So we need about 1/10 of this bag is what our estimate is. I'm just going to cut a hole at the top into the spreader. And now we're going to let Philip spread this and see if it lasts. One thing I forgot to mention, you want to be real careful. If you get a clump of fertilizer in one spot, that will kill that spot. So it's important that you spread it. We did this on the lawn. It might be better to pour it on cement in case you spilled some. But if you do, spread it around as best you can. Maybe spray it with the hose a little bit. This doesn't have any weed killer, and if it had weed killer, you'd want to get the lawn wet first and then put the weed killer down so that it sticks to the leaves. This is just fertilizer, so we can put this on dry. Probably want to water it after, but right now it doesn't have to be wet when we put it on. We have no idea what setting to put this on because the bag doesn't tell us. If we did more research online, we could probably figure it out. I'm suggesting we just start at a low middle setting. So we're going to set it on 5. Half of this would be around 7.5. We're going to set it on 5. We can always go over it again if it's not enough. But if it's too much, then you're kind of in trouble. So we're going to start with that. And now Philip gets to spread it on his lawn. All right, Philip, do you feel like that spread it out at a good amount?
I do feel like it spread it out at a good amount. And it was actually, with the amount we put in, I think it was planned really well. And I started, back here towards the back where it needs the most anyway. So with it totally full, I was able to get a good amount out there. And then when it started to get down to less, where it would distribute less of it around, I was in these areas anyway that needed less of it. Correct.
So a couple things that you ran into that I didn't mention. The fertilizer sits in the bottom, but it doesn't always feed towards the hole. There's the agitator in the bottom that rotates to help it feed in, but a couple times you had to pick it up and jiggle it a little bit to get it to feed through the hole. And there's one other thing too. The pace at which you go determines how fast the spreader spins. So if you go faster, it spreads further, but it also has less concentration if it's spreading further. So you might get a more even spread if you walk faster. You don't have to go as close together.
Right.
And you can go different directions to where you're actually mixing up. You don't have lines. If you go here and then you go over here and you miss a stripe in the middle.
Right.
Or if you go both directions and then go this direction, so set it for half the amount to spread and go this direction and this direction, then you're less likely to have lines too. So a couple of other pointers in terms of that going. But all right, so now the question is what? How do we know if it works? We don't right now, but in however long it would normally take, it could be 3 days for weed killer, it could be 3 weeks for fertilizer, it could be longer, and you may need to put more than one down. So, all right, stepsons, hopefully you learned a little bit about fertilizer. There's a lot of different types of fertilizers, weed killers, and so forth. But there's some pointers on a spreader. This is a broadcast spreader and different settings and a dry fertilizer that we put in here. But if you have to do that for lawn care, then it's good for you to know how to do that. You can always pay someone else to do it, but that usually costs more money. So always remember, 2 lessons from every video. You can succeed even though your dad's not in your daily life. And always remember your stepdad loves you. I'll see you in the next video. You remember Philip from the video that we did on charcoal barbecuing.
Out of cleaning.
You're what? All right, stepsons, hopefully you learned a little bit about, excuse me. That's like a dry throat, right when you don't need one. We good?
Yep.
All right. Any questions?